Today I'm going to talk about one of the most exciting, one of the most promising talents in European football, and that's 22-year-old Ismael Bennacer. Now, you've heard me talk about him before. He's a name on the lips of a lot of people at the moment, and I'm going to try and explain to you why this kid is on City's radar, and he's on the radar of a lot of other clubs like PSG and others as well, and why Milan would really either like to keep him or sell him for an absolute bundle of money. So I'm going to go through not just stats. I'm going to show you a lot of stats, hopefully, today. But you can't make your mind up about a player just on stats alone. So I'm going to talk about what I've seen with my own eyes and what other, I think, respectable football watchers have said, not just journalists, but scouts and others. And to give you a feel about the guy, where he's come from and where he might be going to. Now, Ismael Bennacer, as I said, he's 22 years old. He was born in France, in a place called Arles, which is in southern France, between Montpellier and Marseille. I mean, Marseille is a hotbed of football. I think Ismael Bennacer was from Marseille as well. And Montpellier, they had a bit of a rise, and I think they've fallen back again. His father's Moroccan, his mother's Algerian, and he played for France as a kid, under 21s, I think, for France, or in the youth system in France, before deciding to, I think in 2016, decided he'll go and play for Algeria. First game for them, I think, was in 2017. And his time in Algeria culminated, playing for the national team, I might as well get the national team stuff out nice and early, culminated in winning the Africa Cup of Nations with his country in 2019. Absolutely fantastic. If I remember correctly, he was voted the player of the tournament, the best player of the tournament. And because of his age, he was also the best young player of the tournament as well. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the background of this kid. So obviously, as I said, he was born in Arles. He started with his local club in Arles before going to Arsenal. He must have been about 17 years old when he went to Arsenal. I think he played a couple of FA Cup games. Nothing much, nothing spectacular. He went on loan in France before being sold to Empoli for very little money. I mean, I can't remember the numbers, but it was 3 or 4 million euros or even less. So it wasn't much at all. And whilst he was at Empoli, he had a decent first season. Second season, he was on fire. Sadly for Empoli, they were relegated. But people noticed Ismael Bennacer. They saw how he played. In those days, he was playing as what we call a half winger in English. It's a translation of the mezzala. I think that's the right word. It's the Italian mezzala, and in English we'd say half winger. He was like one of the players that would flank a holding midfielder or a defensive midfielder generally, or a playmaker. He's the guy who would be flanking them. So that's how he played for Algeria. That's how he played for Empoli. AC Milan bought him after Empoli were relegated. They paid somewhere in the region of 16 or 18 million euros for him. So that is a fair bit of money, and it's a big rise in only 2 years. Not just obviously in terms of money, but in his status, obviously, and everything else. And obviously playing for the Algerian national team, winning AFCON. It's a meteoric rise for this kid, really, in 2 seasons in Italy, and now his 3rd season in Italy at AC Milan. He's done really, really well again. But AC Milan, he was playing as the regista with AC Milan. And that basically is the director, the guy the director or the conductor. So, someone like Pirlo, who could play sometimes at base, he'd be playing at the base of the midfield, maybe withdrawn a little bit. And he's a creative talent. So I've seen him play, and he's absolutely fantastic. Now, he's got a contract to 2024, so that obviously makes it more difficult to prize him away on the cheap. And we're talking about somewhere in the region of 50 million euros at the moment for Ismael Bennacer. And if his contract was, say, to 2021 or 2022, you might be able to prize him away. But he's still got 4 years left on his contract. As I said, that makes it more difficult for him to leave. If you've noticed recently, he's been in their new in the promos and the marketing material for their new strip. A very nice black and red strip. I've seen that before somewhere. Very nice black and red strip. And he's been in the marketing, the promo for that. But you can't read too much into that, because I think Leroy Sané was in Man City's promo last year and they were going to sell him anyway. So You can't read too much into that. A lot of adjectives that have been thrown his way. They talk about his speed, his vision, intelligence, his composure, his dribbling ability. I've seen that, and you can go and watch a lot of minutes on YouTube if you want to see his dribbling, his tenacity, his passing, his technique, his pressing. There's so much that you can look at on Ismael Bennacer on YouTube. And that's one of the ways I looked to find out more. And obviously, speaking to Algerians, okay, they're Algerians. They'll promote him probably like the way they promote Mahrez, a little bit beyond his actual status. But when you get to speaking to actual scouts, people whose jobs are scouts, and people who are journalists, who are, I think, a little bit more objective than regular fans, they're saying similar things. They're saying similar things. And as I said, that's why a whole host of clubs would love to get Ismael Bennacer from AC Milan. Now, AC Milan haven't made the Champions League, so that's a slight bonus for people like PSG, people like Man City. That's, that's a big bonus, actually. So, because they're all in the Europa League. Now, Bennacer, is he going to be happy playing in the Europa League when you could argue his talents warrant him playing in the Champions League? Maybe he'll want to stay there at AC Milan for another season at least to see if they can get into the Champions League next season. Because, you do have a bit of, let's say, loyalty. You want to pay a bit of a thank you to the club that have helped you along the way to what he's achieved in the last year or, just over a year. So you have that feeling of sometimes of responsibility. But we'll see how that goes. Now, I've been told that Pep actually called Ismael Bennacer. That was what a journalist told me based in the UK, that Pep had spoken to Bennacer. So, and I've got no reason to doubt what the journalist has told me. So, if Pep's making that personal connection, I think that's a big, big deal. I think Pep personally wanted Ferran Torres. The City started apparently talking to Valencia about Ferran Torres deal back in December. Pep wanted him. Pep apparently, allegedly, spoke to him personally. And I think that makes a big difference. So we've seen some of the kids in South America, when Pep makes that intervention, when Pep speaks to them personally, I don't know how long he speaks to them. It might just be a few minutes. It's got to make a huge difference to these kids. It's got to make a huge difference that Pep Guardiola, one of the best managers of all time, takes the time to speak to you on the phone or in a chat. So I think that makes a huge difference. So if Pep has called him, I don't think Pep's just ringing him up to ask him the time of the day, shooting the breeze. I think obviously Pep's in there trying to sell the City, let's call it a project, or the City dreams and the visions. And this kid really does have a lot to go for him. Right now, I'm going to go through several pages of stats about Ismael Bennacer. As I said, stats don't tell the whole story. Your eyes can tell you more of a story than the stats. But sometimes with stats, they can give you something that your eyes don't tell you. Your eyes can't keep count. We don't watch, for instance, the Serie A. We don't watch all the games. So, there's only so much you can take in by watching things like the odd game here and there, some European, Europa League games, or some highlights here and there, or some YouTube videos. There's only so much you can get. So sometimes stats are a useful way to add a little bit more meat to what you can actually see yourself. So let's go through some of his stats. Okay, let's start with this. Now, this is from WhoScored.com. And now, what they've done here, they've looked at the top under-23 all-round midfielders in Europe's top 7 leagues. That's the Premier League, Serie A, La Liga, Bundesliga, Ligue 1, Eredivisie, and Liga NOS. And they've looked at key passes, tackles, interceptions, and dribbles. Excuse me. And you can see on the graph there, I'm interested in Bennacer playing in Serie A. Now, looking at his, obviously you've got the 3 different things there. You've got key passes, as I said, tackles, interceptions, and dribbles. He's not done a lot of key passes, okay, compared to some of the others, compared to someone like Odegaard. But he's done okay. For me anyway, he's not a great goal scorer, and he's not a great assist provider. Nothing like David Silva, who I'm going to compare him to later. But it's his other aspects, okay? His tackles and interceptions, the red ones, great. You know, and that's per game. So you're looking at someone in the region of over 4 tackles and interceptions per game. His dribbles also very, very good. You know, he's one of the best out of these under 23 year olds across Europe's divisions. There's about 35 kids there. He is one of the best in terms of successful dribbles. So we're looking at about 3 a game. So when you add all these 3 attributes together, he's the one that shines just above Yusuf. And obviously, you've got to remember which league they're playing in. He's playing in France. Serie A, I think, you're going to definitely rate that higher than playing in France. But he's not clear leader. He's just ahead of Yusuf, but that's well ahead of anybody else. It's well ahead of anybody else. So that, for me, okay, I'm just going to, think about this. And so I've got a player, okay, he's more on the defensive side, but he will give you probably one key pass per game. But look at all the interceptions and tackles. He's giving you plenty, and he's giving you plenty of dribbles as well. So it's showing me that this kid is going to carry the ball. He's going to be taking people on, and he's going to be getting past people. So let's look at some more of the stats for Ismael Bennacer. Now, this graph is something called progressive passing and creativity. Now, you can read it yourself, but it says shot creation actions per 90 minutes and progressive passes per 90 minutes. Now, you can see on the bottom axis, progressive passing per 90, and on the vertical axis, you can see the shot creation actions. Top 2 in the top 5 leagues, really, basically, are Ismael Bennacer and Jorginho. I think Jorginho's had a much better season at Chelsea than in the past. But Bennacer's up there, yeah. He's done pretty well. You're looking at let's have a look on the scale. 7 progressive passes per 90, and shot creation actions, he's got about 2.5. As I said, he's less creative than someone like David Silva. So he's not a direct replacement for David Silva. But he's good. I mean, so there's other players who have got more shot creation actions per 90, people like Locatelli, Bennacer, or Bentancur. But Bennacer, I think that's a decent thing. So he is reasonably creative as well. So I'm pushing all his defensive attributes, but for me, he's not a defensive midfielder. He's not a holding midfielder, but he's, for me anyway, I like him because I believe he's more of a box-to-box midfielder. Okay, then we're going to look at another one called progressive distance. Now, this is really to show who progresses the ball the furthest, and that's, as you can see, it says the progressive distance of passes per 90 minutes and the progressive distance of the ball carries per 90 minutes. And when we look at this graph, Bennacer, he's not doing too bad here either. So when we look at progressive distance of carries, he's okay at 160. Your top man's at 240, but he's in I would suggest the top third out of those players, top players on the pitch. You got someone like Neves, who's way down at Wolves, with 80 progressive distance of carries per 90, and Bennacer's on 160. But when you look at his progressive distance of passes, he's up there at 320 with the top guys. So that's another stat that you can look at. Obviously, you take what you want from these stats, as I said, but he's showing him in another very, very good light. And I'm going to look at another one called pressure regains. Okay, now he's going to be a bit more in the middle here, but and this is basically the dribblers tackled. So someone's dribbling, you tackle them, you're stopping them basically, and you're looking at, you can see the stuff there, the dribblers tackled, and the time dribbled past. So Bennacer, once again, looking at this, successful pressure regains. Bennacer's on something like between 7 and 8, and on percentage of dribblers tackled, Bennacer's up there with about between 4, nearer to 45 than 40. So basically, he's he's going to stop you. You know, he's more on your Fernandinho side than Rodri in terms of his defensive capabilities. But as I said, he's also a dribbler. So let's have a quick look. Now this is, I'm just looking at some of the dribblers, and in Italy, I think. So you're looking at that. He's 86%. That's after attempting 30 dribbles in the season. 86%. So that's his success rate. So he's not bad on that stat either. He's not bad on that stat either. And looking at something else like duels won. So I just want to show his all-round combative abilities, as well as his offensive abilities, as well as his attacking abilities as well. Now, in this defensive actions, we've got percentage of totals, duels won, and interceptions. You can see Declan Rice, who's had a pretty good season here, slightly ahead of Bennacer, and indeed the Leicester guy. So he's done well, as well as Juara. But Bennacer's up there. You know, he's on 1.8 for interceptions per game. You've got someone like Rice is just over 2. And when you look at the total duels won, Bennacer's on something like 54%. Rice is on about 56. So he's up there with everybody. You know, you've got McTominay in this list somewhere. You've got Locatelli, Tonali. So quite a few okay players. Okay, but Bennacer's at the top of, you know, you might say, well, I'm not, you know, who is McTominay? I don't care much for him. But Bennacer's, looking at these stats, a little bit ahead of him. And the last one I'm going to look at this top-rated one. I mean, you take from it what you want, okay? You take from it what you want, because there's not many City players there. Nobody. But some of these players, if you're looking at a European list, it's hard not to have some of them in here. Donnarumma in goal. You've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, had a very good season for Liverpool on the right at the back. And you've got Ismael Bennacer there in the midfield. You might argue, well, you know, there's not a lot of players you've heard of or players from England, but you know, they're exciting players, people that you have been talked about. Luka Jovic, Kai Havertz, Jadon Sancho, Dembele's in there as well, Kylian Mbappe, so you know, Milinkovic. There are some decent names in there, guys. So it's not focused away from England, but there's some very, very decent players out there. When you put all the stats together, and put what you see from your own eyes, you know, what I've seen from my own eyes, as I said, he's very tenacious, very combative. You know, as I said, he's very small and slim, and he reminds me of David Silva in that respect. He reminds me of David Silva the way when he gets the ball, he can hold that ball, he can hold on to that ball, he can twist and turn in tight spaces, and you know, he can fool his man. You know, you see him get the ball, turn one way, and then turn the other way and leave the man behind. So, you know, these qualities are fantastic. As I said, I believe he's a box-to-box midfielder. Not in your Yaya Toure mold yet, because he's not as tall and as big, as strong and languid and as fast as Yaya, I don't think. But he adds that dimension, that defensive dimension, that very good box-to-box midfielder dimension. And I think what he's got to, if he wants to be a box-to-box midfielder or even playing an attacking midfield role, he's got to add more assists and more goals to his games. He hardly gets any, hardly gets any. And in a City side, you know, you'd expect, I think you'd get some anyway just by being in that City side, being in the right place at the right time. But also I think he's got to, if we were to get him, he's got to create more. If you're going to carry that ball, you want some decisive passes as well. You want some assists. And I used to argue with David Silva and some others that David is great at the pre-assist. David Silva was great at the assist, but he was also fantastic at the pre-assist. He was great at passing that ball at the right moment to the winger, who might have been Leroy Sané. In the season, Sané, I think, got 15 assists. David Silva was passing the ball at the right time with the right weight for Sané to cross it in, take it in his stride, cross it in, and for someone to tap it in, Aguero, Sterling, or whoever, just to tap that ball home. And half of that assist was David's for the pre-assist. And I think Ismael Bennacer is more on that side at the moment. So I want to see him, you know, as he continues to develop, I want to see him provide more assists, score more goals. But you've got to remember, the kid's only 22 years old. He's got miles of a career, masses of a career ahead of him. He's got 10 years at least ahead of him. And he's only improving. You know, and I bet Arsenal fans are looking back. I mean, the same way they look back and said, hang on, we had Yaya Toure at Arsenal when he was much younger, and we didn't go for him. And they're going to look at Bennacer in the same way. You've got to remember, he only left Arsenal 3 seasons ago. That's when he was sold to Wembley. You know, Arsenal never give him a chance. And this kid is now, we're looking at 50 million euros for him. And he's only getting better and better and better. Ismael Bennacer, guys, remember the name. As I said, many clubs want him. Would I like him at City? You betcha. He'd be fantastic at City. He'll be great in the games where you want that driving force from your third midfielder. I mean, usually without Rodri as DM, obviously with Fernandinho getting old and Gundogan sometimes there. But mostly it's Rodri now. But sometimes you want something different. And I think Ismael Bennacer will bring you something different. Guys, if you're new to the channel, it would be absolutely fantastic if you could subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you're notified as soon as new videos come out. We're putting out at least one video every single day. And we're doing match previews with opposition fans. We're doing transfer talk daily. Whilst that transfer window is open, we'll be doing transfer talk every single day. We'll be talking to experts, journalists, finance experts, other fans to get their opinion. Whatever's going on at City, you can hear it here at City Fan TV. See you around, Blues.